The emergency siren started blaring at exactly 11:13 p.m. A long, warbling wail that rattled the windows in their frames and sent the dogs into a howling frenzy. It wasn't the usual weather alert, the kind we were used to in small-town Ashwood, Pennsylvania. This siren was wrong. It didn't rise and fall the way tornado warnings did. It didn't cycle through clear, automated instructions like the Amber Alerts. This was one long, unbroken shriek, an unnatural, vibrating howl that stretched across town like an electric saw slicing through bone. I was sitting on my sofa, beer in one hand, TV remote in the other, half asleep while some nature documentary droned on about deep-sea fish. My brain registered the sound before my body did, a low alarm in the back of my skull. Then the power cut out. TV, lamps, the porch light, everything died at once. Outside, the neighborhood followed suit. One by one, house lights flickered off. Streetlights popped and sizzled, sending the town into an unnatural darkness. I stood, heart pounding. My phone was still on, its glow the only source of light in the room. Then it buzzed. Emergency alert, Ashwood County Broadcast System. My stomach twisted into a knot as I read the message. Rules for Ashwood County. Emergency event. 1. Stay inside. Lock all doors and windows. Do not attempt to leave your home for any reason. 2. Do not look outside. If you have open windows, close the curtains immediately. 3. Do not acknowledge any voices calling to you from outside. 4. If you hear knocking at your door, do not answer it. If the knocking persists, put on loud music and wait. It will go away. 5. At exactly 12:15 a.m., you may hear footsteps inside your house. Do not investigate. Do not move. They will leave if you pretend not to notice. 6. If your phone rings between 12:30 and 1 a.m., do not answer it. No one is calling you. 7. If you begin to feel overwhelming drowsiness, fight it. Do not fall asleep. 8. You may hear a voice that sounds like a loved one inside your home. This is not them. Ignore it. 9. Under no circumstances should you open your eyes if you wake up between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Do not move. Do not breathe loudly. Wait until 4:01 a.m. 10. The siren will stop at dawn. If it does not, do not leave your house. Wait for further instructions. I read the message 3 times. My body had gone cold, but my skin felt hot, like I had a fever burning just beneath the surface. I turned toward the living room window. The curtains were open, and beyond them, standing under the dead streetlight, was something tall, and it was looking directly at me. I knew immediately. I'd already broken rule number 2. Do not look outside. If you have open windows, close the curtains immediately. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because it was still there. Standing dead center beneath the busted streetlight, its skeletal frame illuminated by the weak spill of my phone's glow. It was tall, too tall, limbs stretched like they'd been pulled apart by unseen hooks. Its head was tilted unnaturally to one side, and in the dark, I could just barely make out 2 pinpricks of green light where its eyes should be. I hadn't blinked. I didn't dare. And then, it took a step forward. The sound was all wrong. Not a footstep. A wet, slithering drag, like something pulling itself across the pavement. Another step, closer now, my throat locked up. I forced my body into motion, yanking the curtains shut so hard the rod nearly came off the wall. The room plunged back into darkness. Silence. I stood there, phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip, waiting, listening. The siren was still blaring, a vibrating, brain-splitting wail that rattled through the town. But beneath it, I could hear something else. A whisper. From just outside the window. Let me in. The words were faint, drifting through the cracks in the wall like curling smoke. My blood turned to ice. Do not acknowledge any voices calling to you from outside. I bit down on my lip, hard enough to draw blood. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The whisper came again. Closer. Let me in, Michael. I choked on air. That was my mother's voice. But she'd been dead for 3 years. I staggered back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. My entire body was trembling so hard I could barely stand. I pressed a hand over my mouth and forced myself to move, to get away from the window. But before I could take another step, something knocked on the front door. Once. Twice. A slow 3 taps. The rules. The goddamn rules. If you hear knocking at your door, do not answer it. If the knocking persists, put on loud music and wait. It will go away. I fumbled with my phone, hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. The knocking continued. Steady. Unrelenting. I opened Spotify and slammed my thumb on the loudest playlist I had. The room exploded with sound. Music blasted through the speakers, anything to drown out whatever was waiting outside. For a second it worked. The knocking stopped. The whispering stopped. Everything stopped. Except for the siren. I exhaled, forcing air back into my lungs, hands still shaking. And then, my phone screen glitched. The music cut out, and a voice, low, hollow, unnatural, played through the speakers instead. Michael, let me in. My stomach dropped. The music had been replaced by her voice, and the knocking started again. The knocking grew louder, not frantic, not rushed, just steady, measured, calculated, like whoever, whatever was on the other side knew I was inside, knew I was listening, and it was waiting for me to break the rules. I backed away from the door, my legs trembling, my hands clutching my phone so tightly it hurt. The music was still playing, or at least, it should have been. Instead, her voice crackled through the speakers. Michael, sweetheart, I know you're in there. A sickening, syrupy tone dripped from the words. It sounded almost right, almost like her. But it wasn't. It couldn't be. Because she was dead. If you hear a voice that sounds like a loved one inside your home, this is not them. Ignore it. A shudder raked down my spine. Ignore it. I had to ignore it. But how do you ignore something that knows your name? Something that sounds exactly like your mother? The knocking stopped. Silence. Only the sound of the sirens in the distance. My phone buzzed, a new notification flashing on the lock screen. Incoming call. Mom. My throat locked up. It was her number, her actual goddamn number. I stared at it, heart pounding, hands frozen over the screen. Don't answer it. Do not answer it. But the longer I stared, the harder it became to ignore. Because what if it was her? What if something had happened? What if this town, this nightmare, had taken her somewhere, dragged her back from wherever she'd gone? The phone kept ringing. I hovered my thumb over the screen. Just one touch, one swipe. I almost did it. Almost. Then, a new sound. Click. Not from the phone. From the back of the house. From the kitchen. The back door had just unlocked itself. I sucked in a sharp breath, shoving the phone into my pocket. No, no, no. Stay inside. Lock all doors and windows. Do not attempt to leave your home for any reason. I had locked the doors. I was sure I had. I stepped forward, slow, careful, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The back door was open, just a crack. Cold air seeped into the house, carrying the scent of damp leaves and something else. Something rotten. I clenched my fists, my mind screaming at me to shut the door, lock it, barricade it. But before I could move, a shadow passed across the doorway. Something was already inside. The back door hung open just an inch. but it may as well have been wide enough to swallow me whole. Beyond it, the night was pitch black, the emergency siren still screaming through the town like a dying animal. But inside was worse, because something had entered, and I wasn't alone anymore. My body locked up, my breath caught somewhere between my ribs, unable to push past my throat. The air in the house had changed. It felt wrong now, heavier, stale, like the oxygen had been used up by something else. I reached for the door, forcing my hand forward, despite the primal part of my brain telling me to run, to leave the house, to get out. Then, a whisper, right behind me. "Michael." A breath of ice slid down my neck. My entire body seized. That voice, too familiar, but too close. My mother's voice. But she was dead. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because I knew if I did, if I so much as twitched, I would see something that shouldn't exist. The phone buzzed in my pocket. Another call. My hands shook as I slowly, carefully slid the phone out. I didn't look at the screen. I already knew what it would say. Incoming call. Mom. My pulse thundered in my ears. The whisper came again, closer. "Michael, it's okay. Look at me." Do not move. Do not speak. I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing on the rules in my head, trying to drown out everything else. You may hear a voice that sounds like a loved one inside your home. This is not them. Ignore it. If you wake up between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., do not open your eyes. Do not move. Do not breathe loudly. Wait until 4:01 a.m. The clock on the wall ticked. 3:07 a.m. My fingers dug into my palms, nails biting into skin. 7 minutes. I just needed to survive for 7 minutes. The thing behind me moved. A slow shuffle, the sound of bare feet dragging over wood. Something touched my shoulder. Not a hand, not fingers. Something cold and wet. Something that didn't belong. I fought the urge to scream, "Stay still. Do not acknowledge it." The whisper was at my ear now. "Michael, please, just look at me." The phone in my hand vibrated violently. Another call. The screen lit up. Incoming. Call. Michael. My number. A call. From my own phone. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I was going to vomit. I knew what this was. Rule number 6. If your phone rings between 12:30 and 1 a.m., do not answer it. No one is calling you. But it wasn't between 12:30 and 1 a.m. anymore. This was new. It was changing the rules. A nail. A jagged, splintered nail. Scraped against the back of my neck. I cracked. I turned. And I saw it. I turned. I shouldn't have. The human brain is not built to understand certain things. It tries to make sense of the impossible, to fit the unthinkable into shapes it recognizes. Mine failed, because what I saw wasn't possible. It wore my mother's face, but only partially. Her mouth was too wide, stretched like someone had grabbed the corners of her lips and pulled. Her cheeks sagged, her skin bloated and discolored, as if it had been left in the water too long. But the worst part, the part that sent my mind screaming in silent terror, was her eyes, or rather the absence of them. There were 2 pits of swirling black static where her eyes should have been. Not darkness, not emptiness. Static. Like the kind you see on a dead television channel. A void that was alive, shifting, flickering, crawling. I stumbled backward, my chest tightening, bile rising in my throat. It took a step forward. The floorboards groaned beneath its weight. Then, it spoke. And it didn't just speak to me. It spoke inside me. Like a voice in my own skull, tangled in my thoughts, slithering down my spine. "Michael, you weren't supposed to look." The static in its eye sockets grew, pulsing like a living thing. I felt it, physically. A crawling sensation at the base of my skull, worming into my head, spreading like ice water through my veins. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they were collapsing in on themselves. And then, my phone vibrated in my hand. A new emergency alert flashed across the screen. Emergency alert, Ashwood County. Broadcast system. If you have looked, close your eyes immediately. Do not move. Do not speak. Do not breathe loudly. Wait until it passes. I forced my eyes shut so hard my skull ached. The thing took another step closer. I felt it now, just inches from my face. It wasn't breathing. It wasn't alive. Not the way I was. Not the way anything should be. It lifted one hand. I could hear the wet, cracking sound as its joints moved. The phone in my hand buzzed again. Another alert. If it speaks to you, do not respond. It is not speaking with its mouth. It is looking for a way inside. The air grew colder. My body screamed for oxygen, but I held my breath. I wanted to run, but I knew I couldn't. I just had to wait. Another step. The air around me rippled like heat rising from asphalt. I felt its hand hover over my face. Then, it spoke again, inside my head. You should have followed the rules, Michael. Something brushed against my forehead. A single, wet fingertip. And for the briefest second, I saw something. Something beyond this house, beyond this night, beyond this world. A vast, writhing landscape of pulsing, twisting static. Endless, infinite, filled with things like it. All watching. And I realized they weren't here for me. They were here for all of us. Then, the emergency siren stopped. Scene 5. The siren has stopped silence. It was the kind of silence that wasn't natural. A void where sound should be. A gap in reality where things had been ripped away. The siren, which had been blaring through town all night, was gone. And yet, the absence of its wailing was somehow worse. My body still trembled, my muscles locked in place, my eyes clenched shut so tightly I could see bursts of color behind my eyelids. I wanted to believe it was over, that the thing in front of me had disappeared along with the siren. But I knew better. I could still feel it, right there, hovering inches away. Its presence was like a rotting smell in the air, a pressure at the edge of my thoughts, a cold that burrowed beneath my skin. The phone in my white-knuckled grip buzzed once more. Another emergency alert. If the siren has stopped, do not assume it is safe. Keep your eyes closed until 4:01 a.m. If you open them before then, it will know. I forced air through my nose, counting my breaths, counting the seconds. My mind screamed at me to run, to move, to fight. But I had seen what happens when you don't follow the rules. I wasn't going to break them again. Somewhere outside, I heard a door creak open. Not mine. Someone else's. My neighbor, maybe. Footsteps. Soft, tentative steps moving down a porch. Then, a voice. A real one. A man's voice, rough with sleep, confused. Hello? Is it over? I wanted to scream. Tell him to go back inside. Tell him to shut his goddamn eyes. But I couldn't. I couldn't speak. The air shifted. Something moved past me, out of the house, towards the voice. I felt its absence immediately, like a shadow had passed over me, a weight lifting off my chest. Then, a horrible wet crunch, a choking gasp, a sound that I will never forget as long as I live. I squeezed my eyes even tighter, nails digging into my palms. Do not open them. Do not look. The footsteps returned, but now they were dragging, like something was being pulled across pavement. Then, a whisper, from right outside my window. Michael. The same voice, the same man, but wrong. A distorted echo, a sick mockery of what he'd once been. Something wearing his voice. I bit down on my lips so hard I tasted blood. The phone buzzed again. If you hear a loved one's voice after the siren has stopped, This is not them. Do not respond. Do not move. Do not let them in. The thing outside knocked on my window. Software gentle. Almost polite. I could feel the pressure of something waiting for me to break. Waiting for me to fail. Waiting for me to look. The clock on the wall ticked. 3:59 a.m. I just had to make it 2 more minutes. Then, the thing outside pressed its face against the glass and whispered one final time, "I know you can hear me." The clock ticked down the final seconds. Each movement of the second hand dragged through the silence like a blade scraping against glass. I didn't move, didn't breathe too loudly, didn't acknowledge the thing at my window. The entity knew I was awake. It knew I was following the rules, and it didn't like that, because I could hear it shifting outside, pressing closer, testing me. Something long and sharp ran down the window pane, scraping, testing my resolve. I could feel it waiting. I could hear it smiling. Then, the clock struck 4:01 a.m., and it was gone. Just like that. The pressure in the air vanished. The chill that had wrapped around my bones lifted. I stayed frozen, ears straining for any sound, any movement. Nothing. For the first time all night, the world outside felt empty again. I cracked open one eye, then the other. The room was exactly as it had been. The phone in my lap was still open to the last emergency alert, glowing faintly in the dim light. I took a breath. A real, deep breath. My first in what felt like hours. The street outside my window was empty. The snow-covered roads silent. No footprints. No marks. Nothing. Like it had never happened. Like it had never been here at all. But I knew better. I reached for my phone, my fingers stiff from fear. Checked the time. 4:02 a.m. A new emergency alert flashed across the screen. The event has ended. You may now resume normal activity. Do not speak about this to others. Do not attempt to leave town for the next 24 hours. If you saw something, no, you didn't. If you heard something, no, you didn't. If you let something in, we are sorry for your loss. My stomach dropped. The event had ended, but it wasn't over. Not really. And then I saw the final line of the message, one I had never seen before. Thank you for your participation. See you next time. My hands started shaking. Next time. I looked out the window again, staring at the empty street, the quiet houses. How many people had made it? How many had followed the rules? And how many had been taken? I had survived. This time. But now I knew the truth. This wasn't an emergency. This was a routine. A ritual. Something that had happened before. Something that would happen again. And next time, would I be so lucky? The morning came cold and gray, the sky heavy with thick clouds that blocked out the sun. Ashwood looked the same, but it wasn't. Not really. I barely slept after the event. Even after the final alert told us it was over, my body refused to shut down. Because I knew it wasn't over. Not for everyone. Not for the ones who broke the rules. By 7 a.m., the town had started waking up. People stepped outside their houses, hesitant at first, unsure if it was safe. The tension still hung in the air, thick as fog. And then I noticed the silence. The kind of silence that came from missing people. No dogs barking, no kids playing, no cars pulling out of driveways, just empty houses. I knew which ones. The ones with the doors still open. The ones with footprints leading away from them, but never coming back. My neighbor's house across the street, the one who had stepped outside during the event. The front door swung gently in the wind. No one had closed it. No one was left to close it. I looked away, stomach twisting. Some houses had their curtains still open, like the people inside had been watching, breaking rule number 2. And now, they were gone too. as if the town had simply swallowed them up. Or maybe something else had. By 9 a.m., the mayor called a community safety meeting at the town hall. Everyone who survived was expected to attend. Nobody spoke much on the way there. People avoided eye contact, faces pale, bodies stiff. We all knew what had happened, but we also knew we weren't supposed to talk about it. The town hall was packed, but not as full as it should have been. People were missing. Dozens, maybe more. The mayor stood at the podium, looking tired, dark circles under his eyes. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and spoke in a calm, practiced voice. First and foremost, we'd like to thank everyone for following protocol during last night's event. Thank. Like this was some fire drill. Like we were all just good citizens for playing along. His gaze swept over the room, lingering on the empty seats. As you know, events like this are unfortunate but necessary. Ashwood has always followed the rules, and that's why we continue to exist in peace. Exist in peace, not stay safe, not survive. I swallowed, my hands clenching into fists. This wasn't the first time. This was routine. The mayor continued. For those with loved ones who chose not to follow protocol, we offer our deepest condolences. A sharp, heavy silence filled the room. No one cried. No one moved. It was like we had all agreed, without speaking, to pretend those people had never existed, to erase them, like they'd been erased. The mayor pressed his lips together, his voice dropping lower. We will have another event, he said simply. Not if, not maybe. We will. People shifted uneasily, but no one spoke. No one questioned it. He nodded once, satisfied. Thank you for your participation, he finished. Then he stepped away from the podium, and the meeting was over. When I stepped outside, the town felt wrong. Even though it looked the same, even though people were smiling, nodding politely, going about their day. It was all fake, like we were pretending this was normal, pretending that everything was fine. The phone in my pocket buzzed one last time. I didn't want to look, but I did. Emergency alert. Ashwood County Broadcast System. Do not discuss the event. Do not attempt to leave town for the next 24 hours. Thank you for your participation. See you next time. I locked my phone and shoved it deep into my pocket. My stomach turned, because I knew now. There was no next time. It was always happening, and when it did, we would all play along. Because the only thing worse than following the rules was breaking them.